So the iPhone 15 Pro Max now has a longer zoom range and a couple of extra features like 4K 60 FPS ProRes video recording, the fact that you can take any picture of a human being or a cat or a dog and it will directly enable portrait mode for you. Now while these new features are exciting, what I actually wanted to see was if the iPhone 15 Pro Max fixed the problems that the iPhone 14 Pro series had. For example, the blown out highlights, the crushed shadows, the lens flare, yada yada. Well, let's find out exactly that in this very crisp camera comparison between the 15 Pro Max and the iPhone 14 Pro / 14 Pro Max, because the camera setup is practically the same. Also, I'd suggest that you save this video somewhere for future reference, because if you're planning on buying the 14 Pro and the 15 Pro Max, you can probably tell the difference between the two, and maybe you can also help your friends and family too. If you're here for the very first time, I'm Arshad. You're watching Track and Take English, your destination for detailed, incisive gadget reviews. Now, first things first, the iPhone 15 Pro Max outputs at 24 megapixels by default. So you do get sharper details when you look at the 100% crop. But tell me something, would you have been able to spot the difference if I hadn't showed it to you? No, right? Having said that, the 24MP capture technically is much sharper and much better than the 12MP capture, which you can do if you want like lower file sizes on the iPhone 15 Pro Max as well. And Apple manages to do all of this without actually adding shutter lag or messing up the HDR performance. So it happens real time, and that's very, very good. Moving on to color reproduction, it's a game of spotting the difference. Can you spot any difference between the two images? I think it might be tough because Apple hasn't made any change here. But the biggest upgrade is in HDR performance. Finally, the 15 Pro Max doesn't blow out the highlights if the background is too bright, which I'm really, really happy about. You can actually see the outline of the building in the background out here compared to the 14 Pro sample where it has been chewed up and spit out by the highlights. Skin tone rendering is now slightly different. While the 15 Pro Max was close to accurate compared to the S23 Ultra in our previous comparison, if you haven't watched that yet, go check that out right now. A link should pop up. But when compared to the 14 Pro, the 15 Pro Max's skin tone rendering is not that accurate. And I'm really surprised by that change because the 14 Pro's skin tones are just perfect. The 15 Pro Max could have been close to the 14 Pro itself. I would have preferred that. Now moving on to portraits. In 1x portraits, while the 15 Pro Max doesn't do a great job of edge detection, it is definitely better than the 14 Pro for sure. But when you move to 2x portraits, both are almost equally matched in terms of edge detection and sharpness as well. And finally, taking a look at the 5x portrait compared to 3x portrait on the iPhone 14 Pro. And this one matters the most because this is what a lot of people are going to be using for taking portrait shots. And generally, if you notice that 77mm focal length on the 14 Pro is actually better for portrait shots compared to 120mm. And you can tell from the picture of Arnav out here, the actual size of Arnav's face is closer to what the 14 Pro has captured compared to the 15 Pro Max. That's made him slightly chubbier than usual. But one thing that Apple has nailed with the 5x portraits this time around, and I don't know what it has done to do it, is the edge detection for sure. The semantic segmentation of picking out the subject, the little strands of hair, and of course the bokeh drop off that happens is way better on the 15 Pro Max now, and I'm really happy about it. Low light performance has seen a lot of improvements too on the 15 Pro Max. Starting off, you get far less noise if you look at the first set of samples, followed by the improved lens flare correction thanks to the improved anti-glare coating on each lens in the second set of samples. And finally, you get a slightly more controlled shadow crush, which still has a lot of scope for improvement though. I hope Apple starts working on that next. As for the ultra-wide angle camera, in daylight the details are equally good on both, and there's no difference whatsoever in color tuning plus color sense consistency. But the HDR performance has definitely been improved, similar to the primary camera performance. Obviously, Apple has applied the Smart HDR5 improvements across the board, across all the lenses, and therefore you will see that the highlights are better controlled now. And finally, even the low-light ultra-wide shots are slightly sharper too. So yeah, the ultra-wide performance on the 15 Pro Max is again better than the 14 Pro. Now coming to the telephoto performance, starting at 2x, you will notice that the in-sensor crop of the 15 Pro Max is sharper than the 14 Pro. But at 3x, the dedicated optical zoom camera on the 14 Pro is definitely much sharper. And at 5x, the 15 Pro Max's dedicated zoom camera is better, and at longer zoom ranges, for example, at this 15x shot, you will see that the 15 Pro Max beats the 14 Pro. So beyond 5x up till 25x, which is what is possible on the 15 Pro Max, the 15 Pro Max is better for longer zoom compared to the 14 Pro, and that was to be expected. And when you look at low light performance at every zoom level, the 15 Pro Max handily beats the 14 Pro. Be it 2x, be it 3x, be it 5x, or be it 10x. I actually expected the 3x zoom on the 14 Pro to be better than the 15 Pro Max, but that's not really the case. And I'm glad that Apple has improved the low light performance of the telephoto camera by this much. Selfie performance is largely similar across the board and not much has changed between the 14 Pro and the 15 Pro Max. Take a look at the different selfie samples that we'll show you right now and let me know which one do you prefer. As for the video recording quality and details, there is absolutely no difference in the primary camera 4K 60 FPS video recording of both the phones that I could tell. But yes, you can shoot 4K 60 FPS ProRes format video on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. By the way, if you want to shoot 4K 60 FPS ProRes videos, you actually have to attach an external SSD to the phone, only then will it work. Now, one area where I expected the 15 Pro Max to be better than the 14 Pro in video recording is actually low light video recording, but that's also largely similar in terms of details and sharpness and what you get as the final footage. And you know what, even the other cameras, this ultra wide and the selfie, offer same levels of 4K video recording quality. Apple didn't have to improve anything. The 14 Pro's video recording quality was great to begin with, and that continues with the 15 Pro Max. But when you're recording video using the telephoto camera at longer zoom ranges, the 15 Pro Max definitely beats the 14 Pro. You can take a look at it for yourself. By the way, one thing I forgot to mention is that on the 15 Pro Max, when you're framing a telephoto shot at longer zoom ranges, it now has the option for you to see, you see like a picture in picture, and over there you get like a proper indication of what's being framed, and it sort of locks in to sort of for you to take the picture. That's not possible on the 14 Pro, which indicates that Apple is actually favoring longer zoom ranges now, and maybe you will get better zoom performance in the future as well. So if you ask me, yes, the 15 Pro series definitely improves by a huge margin compared to the 14 Pro series when it comes to camera performance. So HDR is improved, the shadows are slightly less crushed now, the lens flare issue has also been fixed, the zoom performance is way better too. Now, does this mean you should upgrade from a 14 Pro Max to a 15 Pro Max just for camera improvements? I actually think yes. This is the first time I've said it, and I'm saying it primarily because unfortunately, Apple is not bringing these as software upgrades. Like, for example, the HDR improvements can easily be made to the 14 Pro series as well. But that's not happened all through the year, and that's happened with the 15 Pro. Which means that Apple actually wants you to buy the newer phone now. What do you guys think of that assessment? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, keep tracking and stay safe.